Well, I'm looking to the side and now looking at the camera. Hello, everyone. I am going live today. It's been a couple of days since I've done it. I was in the middle of a pretty long series of consecutive days that I did, but an interesting thing has happened to me as I've been working toward that goal of doing 30 consecutive days of live, or at least posting. I have had this sort of resurgence of my interest in developing or refining or focusing on my classical technique. I'm a classically trained pianist. I've done lots of modern worship and pop and jazzy sort of stuff, but my background is classical piano. Now that doesn't mean that everything I play these days is going to sound like Bach or Mozart or Chopin. That's not a bad thing, but I'm writing original music that perhaps has some influences of those composers, or at least evidence the fact that I've had some classical training where I can do perhaps more virtuosic things than you might hear in other genres of music. So I simply want to present to you a piece I've written that I believe is finished, but I don't quite have it completely in my fingers yet, meaning I'm not fluent playing it at the tempo I'll ultimately play it in. But I've been watching lots of YouTube tutorials, and by the way, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I could find something to help me develop my technique or my understanding of harmony, there's so much available for you these days. And I've recently discovered some great instructors who have made free, available, lots of great curriculum. So I'm going to show you a few things that I've seen from some of the videos I've watched, but I'm going to use the piece I've written to focus on those things. And I'll also mention some things in my classical training that relate to practicing music that's kind of challenging. So let me show you. First of all, I'm going to do something, I won't say embarrassing, but I work in a studio where I've got studio monitors to my side. I've got the monitors. I've got my Yamaha CP88 here in front of me, fantastic instrument. But I've also got, I'm going to do a little call out view. You can see here, I've got a computer keyboard for my Mac. I've got a little snack tray or TV tray to my right where I have my trackpad. And if I'm doing a classical recital or a jazz recital or whatever, a jazz performance, I'm not going to sit there with the keyboard on my lap. So I have to keep reminding myself, dude, if you want to refine your classical technique or your pianistic technique, put the keyboard on your desk. So I'm constantly reminding myself that I need to give myself every help I can to focus on my technique, or some people call it chops. Man, that guy's got some chops. I've said that about Bruce Hornsby, one of my favorite musicians for many decades now, who's got incredible technique, but also plays amazing pop, kind of rocky stuff that's just remarkable, as a virtuoso. So all that said, I'll hide that view of my keyboard, and trust me, I've put my Mac keyboard is now away from me. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to play basically this first page of the piece, and the concept in a video I did a few days ago was fear the flam. A flam is something that drummers do intentionally. They will play two strikes of the snare drum, but they'll place them just milliseconds apart. So you hear a da-da, ba-da, where it's not like bop. You don't hear one hit, you hear da-da. So, and that's the official phonetic pronunciation of a flam, whatever. So this piece I've written is what in classical vocabulary we might call this an etude, or something specifically written to focus on a particular technical challenge. So in this case, I wanted to focus for myself, and for those of you who like this, to work on yourself, I'll be glad to share the PDF with you of the score. But the purpose of the piece is to give me lots of opportunities to do things like this, where I'm playing more than one note at once. If I'm playing melodic figure, there's no chance of a flam because there's a single note being played. But as soon as I play more than one note in a vertical stack, as you see written here on the page. That's something where I should not play a flam. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't read music, this is useless for me. Well, actually, if you're playing piano or keys in an ensemble or a rock band or a worship team, you will have moments where you're playing. Anytime you have two notes being heard simultaneously, that's where a flam could happen. So here's the piece, and I'll just play a bit of it, and then I'll talk about some of how it works. So here it is from the top. I made a mistake. Now, I'll stop there before I finish the section I want to show you. I've been asking a friend of mine who's a classically trained pianist as well, this note B here, just an octave above middle C or a seventh above middle C, I call it honk. It seems to want to honk, meaning it's louder than I intend it to be no matter which finger I play it with. And honestly, humility is rising up in me that says, Ed, there's a really good chance that maybe your technique is not letting that note sound in line with the other notes. Maybe it's sticking out because your technique needs some work. And that's why I'm practicing a lot more these days. So flams, I'm going to try to play it slowly. Now there's a bit of a flam. That one worked. That D on top is sometimes heard early. So we practice, and we don't just, my tendency, and a lot of us as musicians, is to just sort of slop over things we think need attention. And I'm paying more attention, and I encourage you to do that as well. Pay attention to what needs some focus. So this, one of the coaches I've seen online talks about staccato practice, where you play everything, every note is very short, and he even talks about plucking the key, where there's a literal sort of a swipe of the fingertip. And that, interestingly, exposes whether you're playing a flam or not, because with every note being short, you hear whether they are sounded at the same moment. Now, if you don't read music and couldn't play something like this, I want to encourage you, just play something like, in whatever key you choose. And this is the key of C, for example. So you'd have a third, which is 1, 2, 3 notes apart, and just now play them staccato, really short. And you could do it with the rhythm like. So you don't have to read music. You don't have to read a score like this to practice avoiding the flam. So that's a bit of the piece. So as I progress, I'll do it again from the top. And we'll look at the music. Now, even right there, at the end, on the last measure of the first system, where it goes, here's the last two bars of the first system. I could go, or I could bring out just the C. So focusing on practice might mean, okay, how do I tell my fingers and have my fingers not play anything but the C and B flat in that measure more loudly than other notes. So I'll try it again and try to do that. I'll do it a little slower. Here it comes. Sorry. Second to last bar. Good grief. Gosh. I'm going to do it a few times in a row. Now, you might, oops, let me go backwards. You might notice my thumb tends to be what is honking or a little bit louder. So I'm going to practice that and focus on, what would you say, making that thumb submit and not play as loudly as it wants to. Now, one of the things I have done since I was in graduate school, my teacher, Marion Hall, brilliant, wonderful lady, would teach me about the value of practicing with rhythms, where instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you do different rhythms. You might go, let's see. So it's short, long, and I'll get it all staccato. And again, thinking about flams, not flamming. Sorry. That's enough. Now, even as I say sorry, I'm thinking, well, dude, you should turn off the video, the live stream right now because you're making mistakes. What I'm choosing to do is show you what the work I'm going to do to fix, introduce you to the, not introduce, show you the things that are issues right now for me, so that when I finally record it and release this piece, these things will have been dealt with. But I just wanted you to see a glimpse of what a pianist or someone who's developing their technique might focus on. It's not play the piece from beginning to end 15 times in a row. It's usually a focused attention to various parts of the piece that are proving challenging. Now, what I've done, as you look halfway down the page, you'll see at measure 9 that I've chosen, for instance, the first measure of the piece goes. What I've done now in measure 9, you'll see that same activity up an octave. So I've lengthened the piece by taking that activity up an octave. But because I'm a, I don't know if masochist is the right word, but I wanted something a little more challenging to add to this activity up an octave. So check out what I've done. You can see kind of a blur of notes on the second staff from the bottom. And what I've done there, here comes the third staff down where everything's just an octave. Now, this next system, which is the second to last from the bottom, has this left hand that has this chromatic pattern. I'll play it kind of slow. Now, see, I messed that up. Did it again. I'm messing it up. This is the temptation as a musician, to not stop when you're, I could slop through this, and I'm not being mean to myself. I'm just saying it's not solid. It's not confident yet. So what I've been focusing on is staccato practice for that section where I go. Where and it's an interesting thing that tactile experience, that sense of touching the notes all very short, is definitely helping it become more solid in my musical vocabulary or toolkit, whatever. So here it is again. Now, eventually the goal is to Now, actually, that one worked pretty well. It was pretty accurate. But what I'd like to be able to do is have that left hand to be barely a whisper, so you hardly hear it. It'll just be, I kind of envision it like a breeze blowing through or some leaves being carried by the wind. So that concept, in fact, there's another rhythm, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Instead of going, you could go. Yeah, so That's a valuable thing. And another thing I've done in the score here, I'll get rid of these markings that I have when I release the piece. But in the right hand, I'm going to do the second from the last score, starting at measure 13. It goes... In fact, that's the theme of the whole piece. But when the chromatic stuff happens in the left hand, there's a group of 4/16, another 4, another 4. So that's helpful as you're practicing. So you can 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I would never suggest counting out loud. That was silly for me to do that. But those slur markings that you see above measure 14 are to remind me, and I've got slurs over the 16ths in the left hand as well, to remind me they go together. So the first group in measure 14, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the right hand is the same pattern, but there's a different chromatic pattern below each group of 2/8 in the right hand. Oh my gosh, that sounds so complicated to explain. But as you work on a piece, if you're studying a Chopin Etude or a Bach English Suite or a Beethoven Sonata, break the, don't think you have to just practice with your metronome a little slower, da 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 da, but you can go da 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 or da 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 da. Try rhythms, and it's remarkable how that helps. So again, I'll play it sort of in time. Now, one thing that brings to mind is when you're playing a piece that you know has a challenging part. In graduate school, I played the Schubert Wanderer of Fantasy, and in the first movement, it's got a section, the first movement, it's got a section of very challenging octaves to play, da-da-da-da-dum, bum-bum-bum, da-da-da-da-dum, and you better be aware of how fast you start the opening of that movement, because that tempo, although there can be some ebb and flow in terms of rubato, generally that tempo should match roughly the tempo of the octave section. So here is an example of that. If I start the piece going, let's see. If I start it that fast, my chromatic bit's going to be, let's see. I can't even do it that fast. Sorry. Now, I might like it that fast eventually, but right now, it's kind of loud in the left hand instead of just being this delicate. I think you can probably hear what I would like it to sound like. But overall, let's see, from the top. I keep messing it up. I'm going to keep going. That's the whole point of me doing this video, is to say, don't do it so fast. And I'm telling myself that. With time, I may be comfortable doing it fast like that, but I want to do it with a delicate left hand, a very subtle, like a woodwind instrument in the background, while the flute plays up high, maybe an oboe is playing the chromatic madness. I shouldn't say madness, but yeah, I intentionally wrote it kind of hard to be a bit of a challenge. Anyway, that's the essence of what I wanted to show you today, and also just to show up online. I will say that I'll put some links in the description below of this young man, Josh. I can't think of his last name all of a sudden, but he's a very fine pianist, world renowned, but he's also a really good teacher. And I want to spend some time sharing some of these things I've learned as a pianist as well. And they'll relate to whatever type of music you work in, because being able to play things solid There's lots of, avoiding flams is not something unique to classical music. The importance of, in fact, I'll turn my pad on here for a moment. And this is the key of A. So for instance, one great exercise, let me go, well, that visual is fine. Whatever your genre, you can play the interval. In fact, I can use a larger keyboard. There we go. You can play a C sharp, well, whatever chord you choose. Play the root of the chord, the fifth of the chord, and the third, a sixth away from that root fifth. Oh my gosh, that sounds so complicated. Basically, I'm exploding the notes of the A major triad. So A, C sharp, E. I'm moving this C sharp up an octave. So I get this. Now that interval in the right hand is called it is a sixth. So if I want to practice flams, I could just do this sixth and then the sixth right next door. So that's a great place to practice your solid voicings where the notes are struck at the same moment. Now here's the pad again. I'll go to a D in my left hand. And back to the sixth. Yeah, it's delightful. It's fun to play. But the point is, give yourself permission to have times when what you play isn't always the finished work. It's not always like you're going to present it. Give yourself time, as I've shown you with hesitation to say, whoa, why are you showing them something you can't play yet? I'm showing you that because we are all growing as musicians. And I love that. These teachers I've been watching, their willingness to be showing us kind of the process they're on as well is really inspiring. So that's enough of that. And if the piece that I've shown you is of interest to you and you'd like to get it in your own fingers, please email me. I'll put my email in the description below. It's just ed@cartoons.com, Kerr tunes. Clever, I know. But I'd love to send it to you and let you get it in your fingers as well, or at least just use it as an exercise for working on flams. So thanks for watching. And I'll mention that it's great if you want to subscribe or like this video or leave a comment in the description below. Thanks for watching. God bless. Bye.